Who is Michelle Feeney?
That's a really good question, Abbey.
Michelle Feeney, beauty powerhouse and founder of Floral Street.
The beauty industry has taken me from London to New York, global job working with some of the biggest brands in the world. And then at 53, I launched my own fragrance brand. With fragrance, it has this power to give you little bits of armor to help you. That's why I launched Floral Street. The biggest piece of advice I could give to somebody who's decided to do their own businesses.
Wow. What are the biggest challenges you faced and how did you overcome them?
There has been challenges along the way, but I think the beauty also of being your own boss is that if you make the mistake, it's your mistake.
What scares you?
Not being good enough, I think. I don't think I've ever said that before.
Hi, I'm Abbey Clancy, and today on Exhibit A, I'll be chatting to Michelle Feeney, CEO and founder of Floral Street. For anyone who doesn't know who you are, can you tell us who is Michelle Feeney?
Well, I, started life in Birmingham as my mum's Irish. So I grew up in a big Irish community in the Midlands, which was amazing. Gave me all my self-confidence. And then I've had this incredible life journey so far, which is still continuing, but mainly in fashion and particularly the beauty industry, which has taken me from London to New York, global job working with some of the biggest brands in the world, working with the United Nations on AIDS in Africa, Elton John, and back to London. And at 53, I launched my own fragrance brand.
Could you share any memories of your childhood that you think shaped who you are today? Going back to Birmingham, that big Irish family.
Yeah, I mean, all of it really. I think it's this... Just speaking to you here today and the accent, my Auntie Marge who lived in Liverpool was, I was surrounded by incredible individuals that had your back and believed in you, no matter what. And being part of that community, I think shaped me a lot. And then my parents, ran an off license, a literal off license where people used to come in and but it was you would it's a good idea for now actually because people brought their jugs in and you would get your sherry or your beer into your own jug and get it taken away and stuff. Wow. And everybody used to chat and chat and chat. And I remember sneaking out of bed and going and hiding under the counter so I could just listen to everybody talking. And I think that's really helped me about not being afraid to talk to anybody, listening to what people say. Yeah. So it was an amazing childhood full of not wealthy at all, but so rich with culture and joy and dancing and support. It was great.
So Floral Street, tell us a bit about your brand and the inspiration behind it.
I've never had a plan and I've actually never applied for a job.
What?
And
because you were headhunted and
I know, but I've just sort of taken what's before it. I came out of that 80s female vibe that anything's possible. I worked for, Leslie Goring doing fashion show production. London Fashion Week wasn't even a thing, and working for Lynn Franks, who empowered us all as females to kind of create things and do things differently.
Yeah.
And I took that energy when I went to New York because my boyfriend was a record producer and songwriter, and he sort of said, do you want to come? And I just went. I mean, how stupid is that? I didn't have a plan. I, packed my bag and sort of went. And then I met, I thought I wanted to be a journalist at that point, and I was doing some writing for magazines back in England. And I interviewed Michael Gordon, who was the founder and owner of Bumble and Bumble. And the next day he called me and he said, you might think I'm a bit strange, but I've got a really good feeling about you. And would you come and work for me?
Wow.
And I'm a bit broke, I'll be honest, by now in New York. And so I went in and had a chat with him and I did a proposal. And one of my clients in the UK was Trevor Sorbie. So I'd done quite a lot of hair stuff. And I started 3 days a week. That grew. his business couldn't afford to pay me fully, but he said, I've got half a floor on 56th Street above the salon, right in the middle of Manhattan.
Fab.
Would you like it for an office? I'm like, okay, we'll do a barter. Then I produced a hair show in the Limelight Club. Then the owner of the Limelight, Peter Gation, said, look, I'm launching a new club. I want you to be in charge of it, so they're launching it. And I said, I can't do that. I've never done that. Anyway, he kept asking me. And he put me in a room, and I'd already decided that I was going to ask for an extortionate amount of money, and then he'd say no. And I asked for the extortionate amount of money, and he said yes. And I was like, oh,
result.
I've got to actually do this now. And that led to me being this, I launched the Tunnel Club. I had Palladium with all the rappers, and I just got to know this other world.
Yeah.
And then I got pregnant, so I'm 5 a.m. in Club USA, and Prince had called at 10 p.m. and said he wanted to do an after show gig, and he was going to load in at midnight. They got loaded in so there I am backstage.
I just want to eat cake and get to bed.
with Prince putting on. And you imagine you're in a nightclub on the dance floor and suddenly Prince is on stage. It was like magnificent. But at 5 a.m. he was still like performing. And I just thought, I can't do this anymore. It's ridiculous. Anyway, I launched the Bumble products, and then I got a call from Estee Lauder Companies, who was still private at that time. And they said, we know you've got your own company, but we've heard from everybody you're the best, and would you come and talk to us? And then I went and did 10 interviews.
Wow.
By this time, I'm a single mom. And on the last interview, I said to Jeanette Wagner, who ran the International, I said, is this the last interview? And she said, why? I said, I've got no more clothes. I've got no more outfits to wear to these interviews. She was laughing. And she just said, welcome to Estee Lauder Companies. And I said, well, I haven't said yes. And she said, you will. And then suddenly I've got an office overlooking Central Park on the 42nd floor of the General Motors building. I'm in big power meetings, talking about SKUs and multiple millions of pounds. And I was calling my friends back in England and saying, they don't know I'm from Birmingham. But I think what was so brilliant, I'm a creative thinker, and I found America really embracing that if you've got a good idea, they want you, they say you have to work really, really hard, like really hard. And dedicated, and especially at that level. But suddenly it was like being a professional football player. So you're in the best team you could possibly be in, and you're learning from every conversation around that table.
Yeah.
And they recognized my talent, and they started to buy more brands.
What was your talent, do you think? Because I know the CEO of Estee Lauder said, we want you for your entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
So, for anyone, what is entrepreneurial spirit? What did you have that others didn't?
I think it's seeing things differently, working between, at that point, Lauder went public and they were buying brands. And when you're buying brands and you're pulling them into an organization, you need somebody that isn't so rigid with the organization to be able to see what needs to be seen. I see things really differently, and I can have a vision about a brand or a person or a product, I think, and where it can fit in the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
And I think that's the spirit, doing things differently, not being really afraid.
Is it easier to not be afraid when you're working with someone else's brand, though? Are you still taking those risks with Floral Street? Are you as brave?
I think I'm even braver because it's my money.
Yeah.
It's my investment. You've got to be pretty brave. And looking back on the last 6 years of the brand, and particularly, look, we've had lockdown and everything in the middle of, all of that. But I think it's harder with your own. It is a bit harder with your own company to be as brave, I think. But if you don't do that, you can't strive forward and you can't be different, because if it's your own, you've got to do things differently. Otherwise, you can't compete with the big boys who have got the funds to do, the advertising and all of these things. So I guess it's about seeing things differently, not being afraid. And I think that's what Lauder wanted from me. And I'm a challenger, If I'm sitting around a board table, any table, and I don't agree with something, or, I will challenge it.
Yeah.
And I think in big corporations, often people are quite scared to challenge because they think, oh my God, what if I'm wrong, or they don't like this. And for some reason, I've always thought, well, what have I got to lose really by saying what I think, right? Yeah. Somebody can say, oh, I don't agree with you, but it starts the conversation. It starts the creative process if you get being challenged a bit, really.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So that started an 11-year career and 7 years of building MAC cosmetics around the world.
How was that?
Oh, it was a pinnacle of a professional working life, brilliant brand created by two founders who were partners in life and partners, in the business. And they'd set up the Viva Glam, and they were, the people that worked for MAC were incredible, and it was doing it differently.
I feel like you still feel that when you go into a MAC store.
Yeah.
And especially years ago when you go in and, they were all incredible makeup artists and had great style, and it was a big experience going in there.
Yeah, and I think what did it for me with that brand and made it so incredible was the MAC AIDS Fund, and how the give back was genuine, and how I got to every country. I launched pretty much 40 countries, not single-handedly. There's a team. We were a senior management team and incredible teams of people around the world. But everywhere we went, it was about how can we give money to their AIDS crisis. So in India, I took Linda Evangelista, and we visited a brothel in Mumbai. They were incredible, these women in there. And the fact we'd gone made such a big difference. And we were part of a campaign to legalise kind of prostitution, basically, in order to help change that AIDS crisis there. Linda was phenomenal as well, really phenomenal. So every country I got to go, I felt I could make a difference via the brand I was with. And I've kept that up. You remember we worked together on Saint-Tropez, but I linked it to the Prince's Trust and about self-esteem. And, now with my own Floral Street, it's really about making a claim about sustainability, and also not using sex to sell perfume. It's about you. It's about how do you feel.
A brave thing to do, because every fragrance campaign you see on the TV, it's literally sex sells. Run through the water, wet. You've got the hot guy draped all over you, and also as someone who wears perfume, it's kind of the finishing touch, and you do want to feel empowered and sexy. How do you create that then if you don't want to use those?
We do. There's other great words, isn't there? Sensual, sensuous. How do you feel? I want people that use our brand to make themselves that celebrity every day of their own fragrance. And I find these TV commercials, I could say it's like you just said, all my clothes fall off. I get the guy, I get the girl. I'm swimming with a horse through some water. I mean,
I would love to swim with a horse.
Well, see if we can do
my
that.
dream.
Yeah, exactly. But I just think as a female in the beauty industry, it horrifies me that we can't, I've got a 19-year-old daughter. She's worth more than just saying,
spray this on and you'll get a hot guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No product will give you that. You have to own that feeling, own your own sexuality, own what makes you feel sexy. I'm not saying don't be sexy, and I'm not saying a fragrance can't make you feel that, or a cool lipstick or a great haircut.
But it starts with you.
But stop. My industry, stop making particularly girls feel less than. Boys now as well, because you're seeing, half-clad blokes with, that it started to affect boys' self-esteem as well, hasn't it, as well? So I just think we could do a much cleverer job at what we do. And I want my product to be owned by you. MAC was about that. MAC was about owning your own look, being your own makeup artist.
Yeah.
Way before any,
They were pioneers of that, I think,
totally.
Way ahead of the time.
Way ahead. And I think that's each role I've had with each beauty company, and even with some of the, celebs or the other things I've worked on, has taught me a little bit more about if I had my own brand, what would I want it to be? If I had my own brand, how would I want it to speak? And I think it's about this positivity and beauty, but do not take the beauty out of beauty. It's my mantra. Just because I'm sustainable doesn't mean it isn't beautiful.
Yeah.
You
started Floral Street in your 50s.
Yeah.
We're all getting older. And you think as you get older, you can lose your self-esteem and your confidence. And, for any of the listeners listening to this thinking, oh God, I've got a great idea, but I'm scared to take the plunge and do it. Can you talk me through, why you decided in your 50s to do that?
Yeah, I think I'd actually had a bit of a low actually when I was in my early 40s. I had my daughter at 41, my son was 11. We tried for some more kids, and I'd had a couple of miscarriages. I'd left my big role. I'd moved countries.
Why did you leave?
Well, I wasn't in head office anymore. I'd had my daughter, in my early 40s, and I felt I'd done my job at MAC. I had they moved my job to London when I moved, which was incredible. And I actually launched India and China from London with my teams in New York. But then I just thought, I've done this now. It is time to move on. I've always known when it's time to go. When you're at the party and you're like, okay, time to go now. I felt I'd done the best job ever.
Like Mary Poppins.
Yeah. Yes, actually.
Yeah.
And it was it's time to go. And I had a real self-esteem dip, and I actually went to seek help for the first time, and I was on a bit of medication. And that's when Saint-Tropez came into the lineup, which is quite interesting. The private equity company kept calling me. Again, I kept saying, no, I've never had a tan in my life, no. Yeah. Anyway, I thought, okay, I'm going to go and do this. And I went and had a self-tan in Debenhams, which was in a back room, in the stock room. And I came out and I looked in the mirror. I thought, bloody hell, this is brilliant beauty product, because people start saying to you, you look great.
Yeah.
And then you feel great. And you feel you're, and I thought it's just been marketed in the wrong way. And I said, let's make this a beauty treatment. So that's an example of me seeing things differently. Anyway, fast forward, sold that, made some money, and I took a gap year at 51.
What a luxury.
Oh, I didn't come from a wealthy family. I couldn't take one any earlier. But and I thought, I had the idea for Floral Street, but I thought, does the world need any more products? Do I actually want to stay doing this, or do I want to do something else? And so I got my Land Rover, and I was in the countryside a lot, and I was looking after my kids and stuff. But I then thought, if I don't do this now and prove to myself, and I guess my imaginary audience in all my colleagues around the world, that I can actually create something without the backup of a big company, come up with a good idea that will tell a good story to the consumer, I'll never do it. And then I'll look back and I'll think, why didn't I do that?
Yeah.
And so a friend of mine, it's always another woman that helps you, isn't it? And sort of gives you a push, said, I found you a product development person I think would be really good. So stop talking about it and get on. And I met her, and we sat around my dining table, and I did mood boards, and off we went.
Wow.
And I think my husband's always said it's just about starting. It's like with your kids when they get all stressed about the homework or a project or something, just start. And I also have a question I ask myself, what's the worst that could possibly happen? And if I can live with that, then I'll go for it.
Go for it. Like going back to that gap year and you felt like your job was done. Do you think it was kind of it was a burnout or like a reset?
I think a reset, actually. I think in reflection, before I came today as well, I think I live my life in decades. And at the beginning of every decade, and I'm at the beginning of another one now, I sort of set my intention for the decade. And it's not what do I want to do, but it's who do I want to be and how do I want to be? And how am I going to build my life around that? Like you said, now you're retired, the two of you, and maybe you can have a glass of wine midweek, woohoo. But it's more about my intention on that front. And I think my 50s, I thought I've got to get back to, yes, a bit of burnout. I had to not give my energy to big companies at that point, or
especially with 2 children as well.
Yeah.
Like how did you deal with the work-life balance? Because that's something I really struggle with, and I am terrible for the mum guilt. I want to go to work. I've got dreams and aspirations and things I want to do. And then you're like, oh, but I'm going to miss this. That I'm going to miss, the sports day, or I'm going to be exhausted when I get home for the kids. And it's always a conflict, like an inner conflict.
Well, you shouldn't. You have to own that not being that way is what I've learned. And actually, this myth of work-life balance is bollocks, basically, because if you want to be the best you can be at something, you have to give it your all, right? So something else has to change, or I call it something else has got to go, but what are you going to choose that goes? And I think it's about, for women, about getting maximum help if you can. Like when I became a single mom with my big job, I spent most of my salary, even though it was a 6-figure salary, at 30 odd, that on a nanny and my apartment in middle of Manhattan, so I could be near to where my son was, sort of thing. And I knew I wouldn't have loads of other money, but I knew that would help me get to where I wanted to be, to get more money to, so, but I think with you, 4 kids is a lot of kids, but you also have to educate them that you like work and you love doing what you're doing, and they've got to be considerate of you too. For me, that gap year, everybody in my family was like, please go back to work, because I was, at home, I was focusing too much on them, basically. I think it's just something we have to learn to try and deal with. You have to try and departmentalize some of the tasks to other people and not feel guilty if you're not at everything.
Yeah.
And can I tell you, I went out of my way to do all these amazing birthday parties for my son in New York, all sorts of things. He can't even remember half of them. And, making cakes, I thought I better make my own cake, Colin the Caterpillar is really great,
Sure
So I think it's about that. I think not feeling guilty about accessing help, not feeling everything has to be perfect.
Yeah.
And really making sure your family know, like you've said, I want to work. I'm not having to work.
Yeah.
I'm choosing to work, you know?
Going back to building Floral Street, can you talk me how that all started? Where did you get your inspiration, your ideas, and what was the first step?
Well, it was literally the street, Floral Street in Covent Garden. And I was walking on it one day and I looked up at the street sign and I thought that'd be a great name for a fragrance brand. And then what I did know from my past was that you really, if you've got, and it's good advice for anybody who does have an idea, you can sort of trademark that name in a certain category for beauty or for fashion or for whatever. And so I did that around in territories I thought I would potentially like to go for. So you're sort of protecting your brand name. So that was number one. And then I did I started with doing these mood boards with mood muses about if there was a fragrance, what would I like it to represent?
Why did you go into fragrance? You've worked with so many sectors of the beauty industry.
Yeah.
What is it about fragrance that you love so much and thought, that's what I'm going to do?
Well, first of all, I thought the name lent itself to fragrance. I didn't think there was a really representative British fragrance brand of a modern Brit. Yeah, a modern Brit. This amazing mashup of history and immigration that we've got that you know, me growing up even in Birmingham with my Irish and, you know, the Jamaican culture and everything and all of that. And you see people rocking a sari with a pair of Dr. Martin boots, you know, and you're like, where's our brand that sort of says this is who we are?
Yeah.
And also I wanted it to be more informal. So I started to form what I would like the brand to be. And also about us British, we like bunches of flowers, not bouquets. You know, it's like you'll pick them in your garden or put them in a jam jar.
That's exactly
and, you know,
what I like, yeah.
And that's what I wanted it to represent. And this sort of fragrance freedom, I realised the more my son was in an ultimate frisbee team at Nottingham Trent. And they all came for a big party on New Year's Eve. And then I said, okay, got to sing for your supper now. And I put all the girls around the table and we did testing and why do you buy fragrance? So I did my own little thing, you know. And I realised people were just like, I just buy it at Christmas or I only use it for best. And I thought, why not every day? You know, I'd worked in brands that you wear a lipstick every day, you colour your hair, you know, why not fragrance? So that's how it sort of started to evolve. And I found Jérôme Epinette, who's one of the best master perfumers in the world. And I got on a plane with my mood boards and I said, this is what I want to do. And he was inspired. And then they got behind us. And I just took it, when I look back, it's quite extraordinary, really, even to me, you know, it just was the next step and the next step. And then you meet somebody else and somebody says, oh, I love what you're doing. And I had designers, Michael Nash, help me in realising what the brand should look like. And we worked with a photographer. And it all was this amazing creative process that was an end result. But what I really realised, I hadn't even thought, where am I going to sell it? You know, just like, and then I was a bit dismayed going out to meet retailers because they had a certain vision of fragrance that it was just you put it on a shelf and you just do this and, you know, sustainability and fragrance. And I thought I've got to have my own shop really. So I invested quite heavily in that. But I think if anybody's got their own idea, one of the most important things is, yes, I've got the idea. What do I want that to be for me? Is it a big business? Is it a small, gentle startup? Is it, where am I going to sell this? Or, you know, it's much easier, I think, on lots of levels with the internet these days because you can just kind of make yourself known. But with fragrance, that wasn't really the case because you've got to smell it, right? So I've just evolved it and grown it. And then because I did the sustainable box, we had a lot of people come to us. Mecca in Australia said, you know, I want to launch you. I was like, oh my God, we're just a small company. And they said, no, let us. So we've now got a big business in Australia. And then Sephora in the US said, oh, we love what you're doing. And then it started to snowball and you have to get bigger and better and you have to bring others in.
So how has prioritizing sustainability impacted your business?
I mean, I wouldn't have done it had I not been able. It was my whole reason for creating the brand was to, you know, stand on a platform and say, look at this industry. It does nothing for sustainability. You've got packages that are cello-wrapped plastic. You've got all sorts of packaging, the tops on the bottles, they're landfill. Yeah. Nobody was telling the story about where the ingredients came from. And
all your ingredients are traceable.
Yeah.
Which is a big deal. Because there's not a lot of products that can say that.
No, we even know, you know, a guy called Mr. He collects the peppers, you know, in the foothills of the Himalayas from some groups of women. And what's happened with the sustainability now, again, what you do is when you start something, you start attracting in other people that want to collaborate with you and work with you. And we now work with this amazing group called Clean Hub. And what they do is they offset your plastic. And then we're linked to a group of women in southern India that now have a valid job. They're learning, they're sustaining themselves by collecting waste and it gets redone. And I'm so inspired by people that are doing things differently, you know. But until you start something, just starting really, and then you're attracting it in. And then also, our fragrances are beautiful. The bottle is beautiful. So I want women to look at it.
So you can make sustainability beautiful.
You can make it, it is beautiful. You know, you absolutely can. It depends on, and I think modern luxury is sustainability has a role in modern luxury.
Yeah.
You know, we're all saying, where's that leather from? Where's this from? Or
do you think it's just the younger generation who are more into that? Or
no, I don't actually. No. I think it's a modern, interested consumer, and that's my mom at 82. You know, we talked about our moms and things, but you know, she's a keen gardener. She can't bear to see the environment. She's travelled a lot and seen what the coral reefs look like, you know, and I think it's just a modern, interested consumer. And the other thing that I found is, you know, my mom's 80 odds, I'm just 16, my daughter's 19. We all share love of one particular fragrance. And one of the most questions I get asked is, am I too old for this fragrance? You know,
how funny is that?
And actually, if you bring your kids up, like my daughter's played quite a big role in the whole, brands, you know, sitting around the table and stuff. She now has a sophisticated nose. So, you know, I've also taught her about good champagne and, you know, but I think back to that thing of your kids, you know, so I wanted to start help educating consumers to know what good look like in a fragrance and not just get sold the dream.
How much of the old-fashioned way of making perfumes is still around today? You know,
well, it is the same. It's an art and it's a science. So, you know, I was lucky enough to go to the rose harvest in Grasse. I was sitting in the field with the French farmer, of course, having rosé, sipping rosé and having something to eat. And then he showed me how you take the roses and then they get poured into this facility where it's all just thousands of petals, because it takes 1 ton of rose petals to make 1 kilogram of rose oil.
Oh, wow.
From that rose petal, it goes into this €1 billion facility that has no impact on the environment, and it's all robotic, and it gets made into oil. So it's truly this art and science. And to be a master perfumer, which I'm not, obviously, but Jerome is, you know, you have to know about 5,000 ingredients off by heart. It takes 7 years.
Wow.
So that was the other thing. I thought, why are we just drilling it down to some TV commercial? You know, the art of fragrance. And as you know, the link with nature is beautiful, isn't it?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I think you've kind of nailed it, really. Like the beauty, the nature, the sustainability. You know, it's for everyone, because I know that was also important for you to be available to the masses, like the price point, and, you know, everyone can wear your fragrance and feel fantastic. I think it's
so important. That was another key point when I was putting the brand together. You know, MAC was that. It was masstige. It was a price point most people could afford, and it was really good product. Yeah. And I thought, I want to do that in fragrance. So I want anybody in the streets to be able to smell good, you know. So, but it's hard. I'm a small fish in a massive pond of like big companies spending lots of money coming after you, you know, copying you.
Did that not put you off? Because, you know, all these, you know, fragrances have big, you know, infrastructures and powerhouses behind them. You know, I know you've been an integral part of launching all these brands for other people, but to bring out your own without that.
No, I didn't actually, because I'd also worked, don't forget, with Bumble at the beginning, and then, you know, you sold it to Lauder. And I think in anything you've got, and also I'd worked in fashion, you know, where you'd seen people in the 80s like Vivienne Westwood, you know, sewing things around something's got to start somewhere, and there is room, and it depends on what you expect it to be. A lot of people now talk about, I've got a brand, and I'm like, well, you haven't got a brand, because have you got a product yet? No. They've got a name, they haven't got a brand, you know. And for me, what I've realised, instead of me going, I can't be, you know, an Estee Lauder brand or a L'Oreal brand. I haven't got that backup, but you've got to start somewhere. And it's, as long as we are, you know, we are making pace, and, you know, just launched into Marks and Spencer's, and I'm loving that. It's like, that means, you know, everybody can go and find us, and everything has to start somewhere. But in this particular part of the beauty industry, it is a lot about spend, which I haven't got to do. I mean, I've invested a lot already, but now I'm in it. I'm in it, Abbey, and we've got momentum and we're going to go for it. And I'm not. So it's about looking at where you can go, finding wonderful, the consumer finds you. It's really quite interesting. They find you and they start to love you and you love them back. And then, they tell their friends about it or their daughter or somebody buys it for Christmas. Yeah. And that has brought me tremendous joy. Or even when somebody writes me an email and says, like quite a famous radio DJ female, just after Christmas sent me a text saying, on a really rainy day in England, I wanted you to know that Wonderland Peony is making my house smell fantastic.
Amazing.
And I was like, okay, I'm doing a good job here.
For any of our listeners who, are thinking about doing the same thing, what advice would you give to them?
I think it's, if you really want to do it, first of all, think about, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, you don't want to put your whole life at personal risk at some points in your life, But I think if you've got an idea, I wouldn't be afraid of competition. Yeah. You can become the competition. Mac was once started in Canada with one store, and now it's a bit multi-billion-dollar brand. I think the idea has to be good and true. I think find other people to help you and counsel you. And if you really want to do it, you should just start somewhere and also,
how do you stand out? How do you be revolutionary?
I think you know that about your idea, don't you? And somebody might not want to be revolutionary. They might just think I've got a better idea about how to do something that isn't revolutionary, but I could, I've been thinking crazily, as I've got older and my mum's got older, why are sunbeds always low? Yeah. Why are sunbeds always low? I know. So now I'm thinking, how would I do that? I literally was on my vacation in January thinking, how do I do that? But it's just about that idea, right? That might be a different way of thinking about something.
You have so many revolutionary traits in your brand, with the packaging. You were the first to have, the pulp from used coffee cups, like someone going to collect them. That is like, you've brought out this gorgeous product and you're helping the environment at the same time and, paving the way for other brands to copy it. Because I know like Chanel are using it now and other various brands. I think, that's...
Yeah, I mean, that's a double-edged sword, isn't it, when you get copied by big brands, because you're kind of a little bit pissed off that they've ripped you off. But in the other way, it's good for the environment. But I just think you shouldn't make things too hard for yourself, and you have to decide what you want something to be and not think I'm going to be this mega brand straight out the gate. Your idea might be very, very simple. If you look at, some of the things on American QVC, I do American QVC, very simple ideas, one little product. Yeah. And they make a business out of that. So, or it might be something that you can do from home as a woman.
Yeah.
A working woman. I think, you got to think it's got to fit into your life. What can I afford? Or go and work for another company that you admire, that you're thinking you've got an idea, and learn from that first, you know. But I just think it's not being afraid to start, really. And you don't have to have £1 million to start all the time. I think there's a lot of myth about, and I think with social media and all the TV shows about, being entrepreneurial, they're not really very real sometimes, and you're going to have some really low days where, you want to fire yourself from your own company, as I say. I'm like, can I fire myself from my own company? It's hard. It's really hard. But
have you got a standout day where you thought, I want to give up?
I have, actually. I've had a couple. And my daughter was like, but Mom, it's going so well. Don't give up. What would you do? She says, what would you do? She's scared to death I'll move home and stay at home.
So funny.
But look, everybody, you're not human if you don't go through those days. But then when you get a little bit of momentum, and you're responsible for other people's lives and you start to get people behind you. And a lot of my team actually lift my spirits when I'm like that.
How important is your team for you and, working with people that inspire you?
Absolutely crucial. Nobody does anything on their own. Well, maybe there are even sports people don't do it on the, you've got coaches, you've got nutritionalists, you've got, when I see people standing up and saying I'm this and I'm that, really, I'd be nothing without my team, and I'd be even less without a consumer liking my product, or the person that works at the counter in, John Lewis.
Yeah.
Oxford Street, Paulina, hello. But it's all team effort. It's all a team effort, and you all have down days, and it's hard in a modern company, even harder, I think now, running a company since COVID, with people not wanting to be in the office all the time. It's hard to bring your team together. Yeah. But crucial team. I've learned that all my life. It takes a team.
So how do you go about building your team? Why'd you hire them? Why'd you fire them?
I think it's attitudes, actually. Attitudes over anything, because the rest you can really help somebody develop.
Yeah.
Attitude and sort of dedication. Again, I've been really lucky. I couldn't afford some of the roles. And then they'd come and meet me and say, I love what you're doing. And look, please employ me. I'll do it for less money at the beginning, and we'll be part of this. And building people that want to be there.
Yeah.
You inspiring them with what you're doing with the products and the creativity of that. Bringing in people that can also inspire other people and bring in other good people. It's harder at the beginning. It really is hard, because you're a family at first when you're a startup.
Yeah.
I started it in the basement of my house, and the dog's there, and everybody's there, and you're having a glass of wine after work.
They're probably the times that you look back on and get being the most happiest times.
Joyful.
Yeah. Because you find that with, the big rock stars, and they're playing stadiums all over the world, and they're like, God, my best memories are when we were playing in that little pub in front of 4 people, all of that. It's like the start of the journey.
It is, but you become family then.
Yeah.
And then that, as you grow and skill sets need to grow and things need to change and you need to bring in new people, that sense of family has to sort of elevate and become a more professional relationship, which I've found one of the hardest things, because when you're in a big company, your role, it's got a level. When you're in an entrepreneurial company, it literally is. I might have been at the...
There's no working hours, is there?
No, it's sort of... Well, no, it's all in, and it's also roll your sleeves up. And, through COVID, my daughter and I were doing all the influencer mail outs from the basement, as well as everything else, and I'm the founder. But it's a different beast. Now we're bigger. We need different people in that can show me what needs to be done as well. So I think it's hard for some people coming in when they're not family, when you get to a certain level of that.
Yes.
And for me as the leader, how do I still have that family atmosphere, but make sure it's a professional one as well? That's been quite a challenge, I think, managing people in a different era.
Yeah.
And my expectations versus theirs. So the level at which I've worked, a bit like, I call it like the Olympic team in New York,
Of course.
And now starting again, none of the people have had the experience I've had.
Yeah.
So I think my expectations for the first couple of years were a bit too high of those people so I've had to really readjust the way I think and do stuff. But definitely for me now, there's a young group of people and there's me, and I know a lot and can do a lot. And they know a lot and can do a lot in a different way. And it's that intersection of those two age groups that's important for modern business. Even applying for a job now in a big company, you don't even get to meet somebody to interview. You're filling out forms. And, I don't think that's very healthy.
No. I wanted to talk about your scentscaping and your scent school.
I think particularly, actually, here's an opportunity that came from lockdown, really, is we all became really sensitive about our homes, our home spaces, about how they smell, how they make us feel. I think it awakened our senses to fragrance in all aspects of our life, and nature as well a lot, So scentscaping is really about creating spaces in your home where you scent it to create that mood. So we talked about the kitchen, and we're morning people.
Yeah.
I've got grapefruit bloom candle. I light it. I put the coffee on. You know that smell of the coffee, and I've got the grapefruit, and it's sort of setting the intention before you start the day. You know, and whereas if you want to put the kids all to bed and hop on and catch up and, you know, and watch some Netflix, you know, that will be my midnight tulip, a darker scent, and I'll, you know, with a glass of Merlot. Ours are fine fragrance, again, clean, what we call clean wax. There's no petrochemicals in there. It's a linen wick, because sometimes there can be some other things put into the atmosphere that you don't want.
Yeah.
But there's so many products out there, not just ours, that are really great, that you can uplift your spirits. You know, if you're sitting by your desk or you're doing something, you know, sunflower pop for me is a real zesty one, and I'll use that. So I'm really brought it into my life a lot. And then with fragrance, the same thing.
Yeah. Because I think you and your home are kind of one.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. Like I want to smell good and feel good. And when I walk into my home, I want to feel like it's my safe space and my sanctuary, happy place. And I think using scent to do that is just genius, to be honest.
It's easy actually as well. It's not, and also the lighting of a candle, just the connection with that makes you feel a bit calmer somehow.
Relaxed.
Yeah. And then when people come to your house, I bet they go, oh God, it smells so good
gorgeous
here. And then you're already in a good mood. They're in a good mood. It's the unseen greeter into your home, isn't it? It's this unseen thing that can welcome somebody in. A fragrance doesn't have a gender. I mean, to me, that's the marketing that does that. You either like it or you don't. Simple.
It's so true.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of people are sharing fragrances now with their partners and, you know, and different stuff like that. So so I think it's good that people are being more aware of smell in their life and bringing it in. And I do think it's part of this movement of feeling good in all your spaces.
Yeah. How do you feel about celebrity endorsed fragrances?
Look, it all makes the world go round, right? You know, one of the most successful fragrances commercially in the world is J'adore, and it's got Charlize Theron in it, who's, you know, I've met in New York, who's an amazing woman. But they've been using that same one for 20 years now. I don't know what she actually looks like. You know, I don't know, but now, but it all makes the world go round. I haven't done that with my brands. I am doing collabs with different people, and maybe we'll do one together. And I think I think it comes and goes, celebrity.
Yeah.
With fragrance. And it can make a fast buck, you know, big time. And it can, but I don't think, particularly with my daughter, I'm not sure that would make her buy anything. With
fragrance, it's so personal, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and it's an opinion. You know, I've got perfumes that I love, and my friends are, please don't put that on when you're coming out with me, and vice versa. You know, it's
very
so personal.
It is very personal.
There's no kind of right or wrong, is it?
Not really. No. And I also think you should own, like you clearly do, a wardrobe of fragrances. That's what our brand is about.
Because you change day to day.
Sure. What have you got on? How are you feeling?
Yeah, and
you know,
if it's winter and you want it like a heavier, muskier smell, or it's summer, you want something fresh and light.
Exactly. You know what I use it for is if I'm going into a big sort of meeting where I need to feel a bit powerful, you know, I spritz it on literally before I get in the room.
Yeah.
And it kind of powers me up a bit, you know. If you need a bit of confidence, again, that thing that we said about self-confidence, you know, a bit of lipstick.
Yeah.
Bit of fragrance.
Definitely.
I'm not saying it's going to make you have self-esteem, but it can enhance how you need to feel.
Definitely.
And I think we have the beauty industry has this power to give you little bits of armor to help you. What I'm liking about fragrance is this simplistic way it can have a positive impact.
Yeah.
More than anything else. You don't need any skill to spritz it. You know, you might do a flicking eyeliner, you know, or something.
That's so true,
You know, it's so simple. And the gift of fragrance is such a beautiful gift.
So looking back over your whole career, reflecting on your career, what are the biggest challenges you faced and how did you overcome them?
Well, I haven't always been a CEO. So I think being a CEO in and of itself is a big challenge.
Yeah.
I think one of the highlights of my total career was being in the United Nations in that big room and having Mary J. Blige perform a Stevie Wonder song with just a piano, and having presented the UN with like $750,000, to kick off a campaign for AIDS in Africa. And I just thought this really is a moment. You have those framed moments in your mind where you're like, this is spectacular, and look what I've been part of achieving and doing, and look what this industry can do if it puts its mind to it, So I think that was a pivotal moment. I think being a CEO in a private equity company when I was Saint-Tropez was really hard. And I actually self-doubted a lot, and could I do it? And
why do you think that was?
Because it's a lot of pressure, it's a different, it's all about the money, and it wasn't doing as well as it should, and I had to turn it around. And private equity is predominantly, male led, and you're having to present to them. And I found that I had to really I had to put my Alexander McQueen dresses on, and I had to pull out all the stops. And I used to rehearse with my husband, he's a founder as well. Yeah. And I used to sit him across that same table that I started the brand on previously to that. And I'd make him act as if he was the private equity and I was me, and we'd go through the monthly report, and I'd ask him to ask me the hardest questions that he thought they could ask me, so I would be prepped for that meeting.
How do you work with your husband? Because as you said, you're both founders, both got super high powered jobs. Is there a bit of healthy competition going on in your house?
There was at the beginning, I think, because we're both very, very different. And he's a mathematical mind. He's a numbers. Like any relationship, you have to learn where that comes together and to step back and not say certain things. But I think we sit around we're always talking about business and how we can do things better. And I listen to him a hell of a lot now. I didn't at first. I thought I knew it all. But I know where I value his opinion on things, and I think he the same with me. Yeah. And we've built with our families in the business and everything as well, like you. We're very family orientated and driven, and we try to do the right things in our company for everybody that works for us, to the best of our ability, really. But there has been challenges along the way. But I think the beauty also of being your own boss is that if you make the mistake, it's your mistake. Yeah. So I can say, bloody hell, that was really not the right thing to do, but I can move on. I don't have to report into somebody. Or when you're in a big company and you make a mistake, it's a real mistake. Yeah. Whereas in your own company, no matter how small or big, it's going to not go the way you thought it would. And I think the biggest piece of advice I could give to somebody who's decided to do their own business is, if something's not working, let go of it quickly and move on. Don't keep trying to make that same thing work sometimes. Listen to what's happening, and don't, it might come back in to your company at some point. But I think particularly women, we beat ourselves up. I've done it wrong. I've made a mistake. Oh my God, for days, weeks. Yeah. But it doesn't help you in a business, really. You have to go, that didn't work. Let's move on. And give the permission to the team to move on. And now what I've seen with my team is that they're coming to me and saying, this isn't working, Michelle, can we have permission to cut the cord, Yeah. That made me so proud a couple of weeks ago when a couple of members of the team came and said, this isn't working. I'm like, good decision, go ahead. I'm like, wow, hallelujah. Yeah. I'm teaching, to make those choices. So
when is the time to pull that cord and make it though? Because
that's a really good question, Abby. And I think you have to go with your gut feeling and then convince yourself that gut is right. Yeah. And that might be economics. of the business, and you might be like throwing money at a dead horse, right? And how much money have you got left to throw at that?
Yeah.
Or it might be an idea that can be ahead of its time for the market, or ahead of its time for the lifespan of your company. And what I've learned to do is sometimes I have an idea and I think we can't do that yet, but I'll park it. I call parking it in the back of my brain. And it might be 5 years later, I'm like, now we're ready for that idea.
Wow.
So it's either not trying to do everything all at once, or, I am quite a hard driver and I do power ahead.
Have you ever got it wrong?
Yeah, of course. Of course. I could look back on the last 6 years and say, what have I, but if you're constantly saying you got it wrong, I like to think of it didn't go the way I thought it would.
Yeah.
So let's change course. Because if you're constantly saying it went wrong and you're a mistake, it's very hard to move forward, isn't it, really?
Definitely.
So it's sort of teaching yourself to give yourself permission to acknowledge it hasn't gone the way you'd like. It's like if you in life, right? If your relationship breaks down, or instead of blaming yourself, or you have to look at what's around you and go, well, how are we going to move forward? And I think it's the same in a company. So I think women on a daily basis do that, by the way, with their own lives.
Yeah.
So if you think about applying that into a business life, it's not that much difference. It's just you have these economic hard stops where you like go, no, I'm not investing in that anymore. It's not working.
What legacy do you hope to leave as a female CEO and entrepreneur?
I hope I've inspired a lot of other people to do the same and be brave. And I hope I've showed that you don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to have, a business degree or to do what you're doing, and that you can, you can live your life as sort of being open to what comes in. I hope people take that from, I hope I am inspiring particularly other females, but also males now as well.
Yeah.
Anybody to come into business. As a brand, I'd like to see it go on and become one of the best British lifestyle beauty brands that people go, I love Floral Street, or, and know it's British, know it's coming from a good place, and for it to have some longevity. And that will mean me empowering others to take it on from here, really.
Michelle, I've absolutely loved having you on Exhibit A today, and thank you. But before you go, if you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice, what would it be?
Okay, I mean, I don't know, it's one takeout, but I think as women, I can only speak, I'm a woman, right? So I think as women, we go through various different parts of our life, and we need to look at not trying to do everything all the time, but choosing your time. Your time can be 53. Your time can be 45. Your time could be 18, but choosing your time when you want to put enough energy into something that you're going to feel that you've achieved something for you, let alone anybody else. But I think you've achieved what you want to do. And it could be very simple, but I would say don't let your age or your background stop you from attempting to do the things you want to do, really.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Abbey.
I've loved having you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.